The date is February 5, 1988, and the air in Indianapolis's Market Square Arena crackles with electricity. The faithful, a congregation of fervent believers in heroism and justice, are at a fever pitch. They have come to witness another chapter in the saga of their long-standing champion, the seemingly invincible Hulk Hogan. He is more than just a wrestler, he is a cultural phenomenon, a beacon of unwavering good in a world often perceived as chaotic and unjust. Tonight, however, a disquieting undercurrent runs through the enthusiastic roar. His opponent is André the Giant, a figure of mythic proportions whose recent association with the nefarious Million-Dollar Man has cast a long shadow. The match unfolds with the dramatic tension of a classic Greek tragedy. Hogan, the valiant hero, battles the formidable giant, a physical spectacle that captivates the audience. But the narrative takes a sinister twist when the appointed referee, Dave Hebner, is inexplicably absent, replaced by a man who bears an uncanny resemblance to him. This doppelganger, Earl Hebner, sets the stage for blatant treachery. When André finally executes a partial suplex, the inconceivable happens. Earl Hebner makes the 3 count with astonishing speed, somehow oblivious to the fact that Hogan's shoulder is clearly off the mat. The arena erupts in a cacophony of disbelief and outrage. How could their hero, their untouchable champion, be defeated in such a manner so devoid of a legitimate sporting contest? It feels like a violation, a tear in the very fabric of the understanding of right and wrong within the squared circle. But the shock does not end with the tainted victory. In a move that further shatters the established order, André the Giant, barely having grasped the newly won title, immediately hands it over to his evil ally. The Million-Dollar Man, with unholy glee plastered across his face, now has the championship belt fastened around his waist, not as a conqueror who earned it through struggle, but as a purchaser, a manipulator who orchestrated this entire corrupt affair. The audacity is breathtaking. The sanctity of the championship itself has been defiled, reduced to a mere commodity to be bought and sold. A wave of disillusionment washes over the arena. This is not just a loss, it is a betrayal of everything they believed in. The image of Hogan, bewildered and robbed, juxtaposed with the Million-Dollar Man's triumphant avarice, is etched into professional wrestling infamy. Federation President Jack Tunney would declare the title change illegitimate, citing that championships cannot be sold, and declare the World Heavyweight Championship vacant. This unprecedented sequence of events sends shockwaves through the wrestling world, blurring the lines between athletic contest and theatrical narrative in a way never before seen on such a grand stage. Nearly 1 year later, the wrestling landscape would witness another earth-shattering betrayal. It was February 3, 1989, when Milwaukee's Bradley Center became the backdrop for wrestling's most explosive partnership collapse. The central figures of Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage had dominated as the mega powers, an unstoppable force of charisma and athleticism. Hogan, still the beloved icon, had found an equally charismatic and competitive partner in Savage, now the reigning Federation champion. Their alliance, bolstered by the captivating Miss Elizabeth, Savage's real-life wife, had captivated audiences worldwide. Despite a past as a cunning villain, Savage had undergone a remarkable transformation in the eyes of fans, becoming a respected champion, standing proudly alongside Hulk Hogan. However, beneath the veneer of camaraderie, tensions had been simmering. The seeds of discontent were sown at the Royal Rumble weeks prior, when Hogan inadvertently eliminated Savage from the match, sparking a brief but telling confrontation that Elizabeth swiftly diffused. Savage, a man of immense pride and latent insecurity, had begun to bristle at what he perceived as Hogan's overshadowing presence and his effortless connection with Miss Elizabeth. A subtle jealousy, a gnawing feeling of being second best, had begun to fester within the Macho Man's psyche. On this fateful night, these underlying tensions would explode in a manner no one could have predicted. Hogan and Savage were pitted against the formidable Twin Towers. During the match, Miss Elizabeth was inadvertently knocked down. Hogan, ever the chivalrous hero, immediately abandoned the match to carry Elizabeth to the back for medical attention. This act of concern, while well-intentioned, ignited a firestorm of rage within Randy Savage. Left to fend for himself against the towering opposition, Savage felt abandoned, betrayed. He saw Hogan's actions not as compassion, but as selfish disregard for their partnership. Once revived, Miss Elizabeth pleaded with Hogan to save Savage, who had endured the Twin Towers onslaught alone. Hogan obliged, only for a livid Savage to greet him with a sharp slap before seizing his championship belt and storming out, leaving Hogan to vanquish the Giants alone. Backstage, after the match concluded, Savage flew into a fit of fury and unleashed a verbal assault on Hogan, his words dripping with resentment and paranoia. He accused Hogan of being an inferior wrestler, of deliberately seeking to steal Elizabeth away from him, of basking in adulation at his expense. The intensity of Savage's accusations was shocking, but what followed was truly unthinkable. Randy Savage, the beloved hero, the Federation champion, physically attacked Hulk Hogan with a brutality that felt deeply personal and disturbingly real. He unleashed a vicious assault, punctuated by savage strikes and a level of animosity that transcended scripted entertainment. The image of Randy Savage, his eyes blazing with hatred as he attacked his former ally, was stark and unsettling. The fans, who had wholeheartedly embraced their partnership, were left stunned, witnessing the shattering of a dream team in the most visceral and unexpected way possible. The heel turn wasn't a gradual descent into villainy. It was a sudden, explosive eruption of bitter resentment that irrevocably altered the company's landscape. 3 years would pass before this next moment of shocking brutality would grip the wrestling world and redefine violence boundaries. By May 30th, 1992, when Superstars of Wrestling took place within Syracuse's Memorial Auditorium, fans had grown accustomed to theatrical violence and cartoonish villainy. The Big Boss Man, a former corrections officer turned fan favorite, had just concluded a dominant match, standing as a symbol of law and order who used his strength to overcome rule breakers. Tonight, however, that familiar sense of order was about to be violently shattered. As the Boss Man celebrated his victory, an imposing brute known as Nailz emerged from the back, clad in an orange prison jumpsuit. Even before he uttered a word or threw a punch, Nailz exuded a palpable sense of menace, a raw aggression that felt markedly different from typical presentation. In recent weeks, a dark narrative had been woven through promotional segments. Nailz claimed that the Big Boss Man was once his abusive correctional officer in prison. He had painted a vivid picture of relentless torment and injustice, vowing brutal revenge. These promos had been genuinely disconcerting, yet they were still perceived as theatrical spectacle. No one expected the level of brutality about to unfold. As Nailz stepped into the ring, his eyes fixated on the unsuspecting Big Boss Man, an eerie tension filled the arena. The usual post-match fanfare faded into uneasy silence. Nailz didn't engage in playful taunting or boastful pronouncements. His actions spoke of violence. Nailz seized the Boss Man's own nightstick and used it as a weapon against him, repeatedly striking and choking the helpless victim. With genuine ferocity, he quickly overpowered the former lawman and handcuffed him to the top rope, rendering him completely defenseless. The thud of the nightstick and gasping breaths echoed through the arena in an unsettling symphony. The attack didn't seem choreographed, it felt raw and disturbingly visceral, a brutal assault that felt genuinely dangerous. The Syracuse crowd watched in stunned silence, their cheers replaced by gasps of horror. This wasn't the violence they expected from wrestling entertainment. Even by 1992 standards, this attack stood out for its sheer viciousness, leaving a lasting impact that transcended typical wrestling storytelling. The final shock in our chronicle takes us back in time 16 months, proving even the most downtrodden could rise spectacularly. When January 19, 1991 arrived and the Royal Rumble took place at Miami Arena, few could have predicted one of wrestling's most satisfying betrayals was about to unfold. The $1 Million Man had dominated the landscape with his arrogant wealth, accompanied by his ever-present bodyguard, Virgil. Their relationship was one of stark contrast. The $1 Million Man, the epitome of condescending wealth, and Virgil, the manservant who carried bags, absorbed verbal abuse, and occasionally stepped into the ring at his boss's behest. This toxic dynamic had played out for years, with Ted constantly belittling Virgil, treating him more like property than a human being. Virgil had always complied, his face often displaying resignation or barely contained resentment, becoming a familiar fixture in the $1 Million Man's opulent world. The audience had grown accustomed to this dynamic, viewing Virgil as permanently trapped with no hope of liberation. Tonight, as the two teamed against Dusty and Dustin Rhodes, this established hierarchy was about to crumble unequivocally. Throughout the match, the familiar dynamic remained intact. Ted barked instructions and took credit for their successes. When the match concluded with their victory, he smugly demanded that Virgil retrieve the $1 million championship belt and strap it around his waist. Virgil, as he had done countless times before, retrieved the coveted belt and entered the ring. But this time, something was fundamentally different. Instead of dutifully fastening the championship, Virgil stopped. He looked down at the belt, then up at his tormentor, a flicker of defiance in his eyes that had been absent for so long. Rather than complete the ritual of subservience, he deliberately dropped the belt at his feet. The Miami crowd, sensing something momentous was about to occur, began to stir with anticipation. The $1 million man, momentarily taken aback but still confident in his control, scoffed and ordered Virgil to pick up the belt. He then made the fatal mistake of turning his back, his arrogance blinding him to the revolution brewing behind him. It was in this pregnant pause, filled with years of accumulated frustration, that the impossible happened. Virgil picked up the $1 million championship belt, but instead of following orders, he gripped it firmly and swung with all his might. The belt connected squarely with an unsuspecting head, producing a sound that reverberated through the arena. This was followed by an explosion of cheers from the Federation faithful. The sheer unexpectedness of Virgil's actions made this moment truly shocking. He had been consistently portrayed as completely subservient, seemingly incapable of standing up for himself. The idea that he would not only defy his master, but physically attack him with the $1 million championship was beyond the realm of possibility for most fans. It represented a heel-to-face turn of epic proportions, a cathartic release of years of accumulated humiliation. The crowd's reaction was pure elation, a collective outpouring of support for the ultimate underdog who had finally found courage to fight back. The image of the $1 million man lying stunned while Virgil stood tall, finally free from servitude, was both powerful and unforgettable. This moment wasn't just a simple turn, it was the culmination of a drawn-out storyline, a payoff no one saw coming, leaving audiences utterly and delightfully shocked.